I don't know about you, but when you're my kind of age, you look on certain, I'm 56, you look on certain ideas that feel trendy and a bit problematic. One of my bête noirs, for instance, is the endless fun media types have in classifying different generations as if we were computers. Back in my mother's day, there was a clear generation difference between her and her mother. Her mother thought that homosexuality was a sin and you went to hell. My mother, bless her, thought it was a disability. By my time, of course, lots of my best friends were gay. So you can see, over 30 years, the generations were shifting. But this idea that generations shift once every 15 years, that sounds to be an idea from technology to me. And yet, there's something in it. Because there's very clearly, beyond that shift about the tolerance of homosexuality, a major divide between those who were born before 1980 and those who are after. As with all these divides, it's a bit problematic. This is my big problem with the idea of generations, is you can't really insert the guillotine. You can't fold somebody into that generation rather than the other generation. Doesn't make sense. And yet, there is clearly a divide. Let's go back to Foucault. So Foucault, in his two last books published in his lifetime, arguably they were the last two books he wanted published, Use of Pleasure and Care of the Self, talks about how humans, by which, well, Greeks, learnt to fold their identity. They started to worry about who or what they were. Desire stopped being a thing you just had and lusted after. It became a problem, something to be worried about. Who you had the hots for was something you cared about. It mattered to you. And you would cultivate yourself then. You would grow certain desires. You would suppress certain other desires. Now, these folding of the self, the understanding of oneself, not as a thing, but as an ongoing project, like a farm, but also through others' eyes, as other people might see you. Foucault says, comes in with the Greeks, developed by the Romans and the Christians, and becomes the main battleground for the disciplinary technologies that earlier Foucault had understood so well. All the mechanics of discipline and punish are enacted upon a self that is already folded in, already trying to understand what it desires and what it doesn't. Fine. So where you draw the line, what do you fold in and what do you fold out of yourself? Now, this matters. People who fold too much in, who think the world is just about them, we call narcissistic. We might elect them as leaders, but they're pillocks nonetheless. And those who don't fold at all, who are not at all reactive, they can either be schizophrenic or psychotic. Now, I'm a little unhappy about these categories, but you can see how it works. Where you fold and what you fold in matters, because it explains how you worry about yourself, how you understand yourself, how you compose yourself as a subject in the world, and more than that, what it is you ask other people to understand about you, and whether you think you can fold their reactions to you in them. You'll see what I'm talking about if you're listening carefully. So, between that generation that calls Generation X, I can still remember when my old friend Rupert, we were about 24, and he came in terribly excitedly saying, we're Generation X, you know. And I said, oh, fudge, that sounds bad. And back in the day, it was simply defined as that group of people, ex-punks, who the advertising industry couldn't classify. So they called us Generation X because they were admittingly didn't understand us very well. Well, plus change. It later, of course, became the way you understood blocks of humanity to make them accord with different moments in technology. Anyway, that's another point. So, ooh, the lights have gone out. That happens. I'm in tunnels, in case you wondered, because there's a storm outside. So I'll see if I can put the lights back on. It will be better. So, with Foucault, what is happening is whether you fold bits of your body in or outside yourself. And each self will only fold in a certain amount. You only can fold in a certain amount. Okay? And that, of course, is the shift. Back in my day, you folded your body firmly into your identity. Once you were a man, by and large, you were a man. You could be a gay man, fine, but you would be a man. Yes, there were some people who changed their identity, and they were problematized and, to a degree, monsterized. But the point was that you folded yourself into yourself. Okay? Now, that created sexualities that were actually enormously complicated, and were very similar, I would suspect, to the sexualities in the Sodom book of Lost Time, where it is argued that sexuality is always complicated. One is always heterosexual and homosexual, both male and female. And one is always juggling the balls between one's different shifting identities and trying to find a partner who complements one as one evolves. If you fold, then, complicated desires and bodies together and force them to accord, if you fold the body inside what you are, you end up with very complicated, shifting identities. And that was the world I inhabited. It was the world of glam rock metalers who dressed like women but had very male attitudes. It was the world then of Boy George, who didn't have very male attitudes. It was just the way you did it. It was the way you constructed your identity. There was no push to change your body because your body was folded in on yourself. And of course, I told you you'd all know where it was going. That's changed. Now, I could give you 5, 6, 7 reasons for why it's changed. Technology changes it. Once you've got identities linked to avatars, it changes. There's a legacy product of feminists. My generation of academic feminists eroded the difference between men and women. Now, if you're like me, that was going one way, would all look like kind of tomboys. But there's no other way, no reason you couldn't pull it other ways. There are issues about advertising, which always worries me, and makeup. And there are all sorts of other things that could have changed. But the point is now that the fold line is different. You don't have to fold your biological body into your identity. And once you don't do that, then there's no reason to be stuck in one biological body. And once you do that, there is every expectation that other people will fold your new identity into their perception of you. Because your understanding of yourself is influenced by how you are seen in others' eyes. Hence the entire battle of the pronoun. Because what that is doing is demanding that somebody else sees you as you see yourself in order to confirm your identity. It's a straight battle of the fold, of what you're including and what you're excluding. Now, in all of this, I don't think there's a right or a wrong, particularly. Oh, there are very bad attitudes. I certainly think hate is always bad, under every circumstance. And any generation blowing its trumpet at the other generation saying, we are right, you're wrong, is clearly just foolish. As foolish as the idea of generations. What you have to understand is what is being folded to make the human soul has changed. As it's always changed. As it changes. But this was a quick one. And we just have to live with it. And accept that fundamental shift in how we understand the notion of identity.